There we go. Okay. All right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Tommy Blunt, and this is my Barrett Honors thesis defense for my project, Oasis, a mobile solution for improving gambling self-regulation. So just a brief overview of what we'll be going through today. We'll have an introduction section where I introduce what Oasis is, a background section that talks about the research that went into Oasis, the approach section, which talks about the approach I took in developing Oasis, a demonstration of Oasis, some results of user feedback and testing through Oasis, and finally a conclusion. So then we'll have time for questions at the end. Okay, so for the introduction, I'm just going to answer a couple preliminary questions to contextualize what Oasis is and what problems it's trying to solve. So what is problem gambling? Problem gambling, or gambling addiction, is a condition in which an individual persists in gambling despite the occurrence of negative consequences or the desire to stop. How does the casino environment contribute to problem gambling? The casino environment contributes to problem gambling through hostile design. Here, someone's unmuted. There we go. Hostile design, constant sensory stimulation, and the illusion of control over outcomes. These factors can make it harder to stop gambling, keeping you engaged and spending money as long as possible. So what is Oasis and how does it help with gambling behavior? Oasis is a self-appraisal mobile app for potential or current problem gamblers to take control of their habits by providing a periodic check-in notifications during a gambling session and allowing users to see their progress over time. So that's basically like a brief introduction of what we're going through. So onto the background research behind Oasis. Start off by talking about problem gambling. So problem gambling is the problem that Oasis is trying to solve, and it's one of the main research areas I focused on in creating Oasis. So problem gambling can exist in many forms across a wide spectrum of severities. At a low severity, problem gambling could just be a slight disruption to someone's life, like spending more time than normal at the casino. At a moderate severity, problem gambling can cause a more substantial disruption to someone's life, including a neglect of responsibilities or relationships in favor of seeking a high from gambling. In some cases, problem gambling can cause severe disruption to someone's life, even resulting in serious financial, legal, or psychological problems that can have a lasting negative effect on those affected and their families. Severe problem gambling can be diagnosed as gambling disorder, a type of impulse control disorder classified under the DSM-5. So that's like a brief overview of what problem gambling is. So it can kind of be hard to draw the line between healthy gambling and problem gambling, but there's some indicators that you can suggest one class of gambling behavior over the other. Healthy gambling is typically conducted in moderation, where a gambler can control their behavior and limit their losses. On the other hand, problem gambling is characterized by a loss of control over gambling behavior, leading to the abandonment of moderation for thrill-seeking, illogical behavior that can lead to dangerous consequences. These consequences can include financial problems, relationship issues, and mental health problems, often putting those affected and their family at risk of physical or emotional harm. While there's no prescriptive definition of where to draw the line, any early warning signs of problem gambling should be taken seriously, especially for those who are at risk. So problem gambling has a variety of causes, but one aspect I found especially interesting and important is the role certain neurotransmitters play during a gambling session. So dopamine is a neurotransmitter that plays a pivotal role in the reward center of your brain. Over the course of a gambling session, research shows that dopamine is actually released in a steady flow rather than in large spikes centered around wins. When examining the difference between problem gamblers and healthy gamblers, research showed that there was no real difference between the dopamine levels of a problem gambler and a healthy gambler when they won. But when they lost, there was a large difference, with problem gamblers having a much higher level of dopamine. This can lead towards a pattern of loss-chasing behavior, where the more money a problem gambler loses, the more they tend to keep gambling to try to recoup their losses. One interesting fact is that near misses, or if you have a slot machine and there's a bunch of numbers in a row and one's missing, that actually recorded higher levels of dopamine than wins for problem gamblers, showing that being close to a win or the allure of a win may be more substantial to the reward systems of our brain than actually winning. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Talking about prevalence of problem gambling. So problem gambling is a widespread issue across the United States. So the National Council on Problem Gambling reports 2 million US adults, 1%, are estimated to meet the criteria for severe gambling problems in a given year. That's crazy. A journal article from the Journal of Gambling Studies explored the changes in both overall gambling population and problem gambling population of the United States over around a decade from 1999 to 2013. They reported that while the population percent of the population that gambled in the past year declined to a statistically significant degree, they found no significant difference in the prevalence of problem gambling over the same time frame. So gambling is going down, but problem gambling is staying around the same. And with the rise of online casinos and sports betting across the US, more people than ever are at risk of problem gambling. So the risk of problem gambling can be associated with several demographic and personal factors. An analysis from Austria in 2015 showed that when accounting for other variables, there are a few especially influential factors that can put someone at risk for developing problem gambling. Men are 1.8 times as likely on average to become addicted to gambling, and those 26 or under are more than twice as likely to become problem gamblers. Some environmental factors that contribute to increased risk are parents with addiction problems, growing up with a single parent, or growing up working class. Finally, substance abuse and mental health issues correlate most with increased gambling addiction risk, with at-risk alcohol use contributing to 4x greater odds of being a problem gambler, and mental health issues contributing almost 6 times. So, while being a gambler or being a member of one or multiple of these at-risk groups does not necessarily mean you're individually more likely to be a problem gambler, these group statistics show trends that are helpful in understanding the causes and potential solutions for the issue. So, speaking of solutions, prevention. So, preventing problem gambling typically occurs at the systematic level, with either policies or educational practices that attempt to reduce the risk of problem gambling. Legislatively, governments attempt to restrict who can gamble and where gambling can occur by setting minimum age requirements and restricting where casinos can be built. Unfortunately, the incentive to maintain a gambling population for tax revenue purposes causes governments to try and shift the problem gambling population to tourists or other groups that don't drain government resources, rather than eliminating it outright. Schools and teachers can also help prevent problem gambling by spreading awareness of the issue and attempting to tackle certain fallacies that can cause a greater risk for problem gambling behavior. So, intervention. Just a disclaimer, addressing severe gambling addiction is a serious issue, often requiring careful, substantial support in the form of friends, loved ones, and trained professionals. Critically, the Oasis application is not designed to replace the use of provably effective behavior modification techniques like therapy, self-exclusion, or group support sessions for these groups. To fulfill its role as an effective tool to use alongside these techniques for problem gamblers in recovery, as well as serve as an accountability mechanism for those who want to keep their gambling habits healthy, the research surrounding intervention for this project focused on voluntary self-regulatory techniques. So that's techniques that you do yourself, and they're all 100% voluntary, that can help gamblers stay grounded in the hostile environment of a casino. So one type of voluntary intervention comes in the form of personalized normative feedback, where people are asked what they think is normal surrounding gambling topics, and then they're given the actual normal to help correct any misguided perspectives they might have. So this caused people to heavily reduce their risk-taking behavior, which is good. But unfortunately, the limited scope of the study offered no perspective on the long-term effects of this type of intervention. Another type of intervention is dynamic messaging, where play is interrupted with a pop-up message that the user must read and dismiss before returning to their session. In the study where this method was tested, they used modified slot machine terminals that displayed the messages over the game interface. Unfortunately, the system couldn't keep track of a user moving between machines, which is pretty common in a casino environment. And it would have to be implemented by casinos themselves, which have a vested interest in keeping people gambling. During research and development, it seemed like a great opportunity to use my mobile development experience to apply this idea to a standalone app that a user could install and take with them anywhere. So for dynamic messaging, as for the content of these messages, there's typically 2 types of content they can have. One type of messaging they have is informational messaging, which aims to provide information that corrects misunderstandings of gambling in order to reduce fallacies, like the gambler's fallacy, for example. Unfortunately, this type of messaging may not cause any significant change to gambling behavior, especially in the long term. The alternative type of messaging, and the one that Oasis is built around, is self-appraisal messaging. This type of messaging focuses on encouraging people to monitor their behavior and compare it with their goals, encouraging self-reflection and autonomy. Rather than just being generally informative, this type of messaging can be made personally relevant by catering to people's specific goals. This type of messaging has been shown to cause a helpful change in gambling behavior, improving awareness and helping people take control of their gambling habits. All right, so that's about it for the background research. Going into the approach I took in developing Oasis, that was centered around 4 different goals. So the first goal was to provide effective self-appraisal messaging through periodic notifications during a gambling session. So you get notifications throughout a gambling session on your phone, and you'd be notified to check in with your goals. The second goal was to allow the user to set concrete goals and evaluate progress for a gambling session over time, So you're able to see your progress over time and help make changes that can help you do better over time. Another goal was to display progress throughout a session and over multiple sessions. So like a nice overview that you can see individual sessions as well as sessions over time and see how you're trending. And finally, find a delicate balance where check-ins disrupt play without becoming enough an annoyance to cause the user to ignore them. So when building the app, I used several tools. So one of the main tools was Expo. Expo is basically the foundation that the app was built on. It is a JavaScript-based React Native library that allows you to build mobile apps in JavaScript, which I have a lot of experience in web development. That felt like a natural fit, especially because it allows you to make one app that works on iOS and Android. So React Native, I mentioned, is basically like the brain behind the app that allows me to maintain like internal state, like how your session data is stored versus how it's showed on the screen. So that's a great way to link that together in a nice and natural way. JavaScript is the main programming language that React Native and Expo use, so that's the natural choice for that. Expo Go is a live testing app for rapid development. Now, I really like Expo Go. It's a really useful app. I can have the app code open on my screen, and then as soon as I change something, like change a line of text, it'll immediately show up on my phone. So I can test changes very quickly. That made for a really good and rapid development process. So NPM stands for Node Project Manager, and it's a package manager for incorporating open source modules. So I used I used a lot of open source modules in the course of making this project. Some of the main ones were certain UI elements. So there's native like date and time pickers. That's a big one. Like different buttons, different navigation menus. So that's something that open source modules made really well, were really intuitive and felt like they fit the feel of the actual native app. So that was cool. And finally, I used Figma. Figma I used to basically mock up the user interface so I could create like what the interface would look like, and then I'd finally implement it into code. So originally this project was actually used as an extension of my capstone project, which focuses on applying machine learning to the space of gambling. But as I looked into it, unfortunately, this type of approach had several issues when applying it to the field of gambling self-help. So one concern was that this type of approach, that there's a severe lack of publicly available training data for such a model. Machine learning systems often take hundreds of thousands or even millions of data points to be able to make predictions or assessments with a high degree of accuracy. And since this training data doesn't exist, I would have to either collect it myself, which would be absurd, it would cost a lot of money, or collect it from others in the form of a study. So this type of data involves gambling with real money, which has higher stakes and insurmountable financial and ethical barriers for a project of this scope. Also, even a well-trained machine learning model has a large degree of unpredictability and inexplicability. Machine learning models are black box systems, which means it's impossible to see what decision-making processes are going on inside the network. And that can cause serious issues with liability, as there could be some situations where the model has a diminished positive effect or even a negative effect on gambling behavior. It'd be impossible to know beforehand. Ultimately, I decided not to pursue a machine learning approach and instead focused on the self-appraisal messaging method I discussed earlier. Okay, onto the design. So the design for Oasis was guided by a tagline that I had even before writing any code. It was your friend in the casino. So Oasis, as the name implies, was intended to provide a resting place away from the blinding lights of a casino. And to do that, I decided on using a simple user interface without a lot of colors or moving parts that would allow people to have a calm place to relax and reflect throughout their gambling sessions. Over the course of the next few slides, I'll show you my design mockups for the main pages of the app, which eventually were implemented in the app code itself. Okay, so this is the history screen. This is the main screen of the app. You'll see that there is a You'll see that there is a overview section at the top, which shows you your performance over time over the course of many sessions. It has a graph there, the performance graph that was made into the app code. I dropped the pie charts just because I felt it looked a little busy with the pie charts. And then I added, there's a blurb, so keep up the good work. I think that's really cool. It rotates in every hour or so, and it just provides an extra bit of motivational messaging that can kind of help you out. And then the bottom section has your table of past sessions. So that'll allow you to view details for specific past sessions. And in the implementation of these, I changed a couple things from this mockup you'll see. So you'll see that the overview screen will be a little different on there, like I mentioned. And also the past sessions have a indicator emoji next to them, displaying how well you did on that session. And I'll talk a little bit more about how the sessions are graded later. So the start session screen is the screen where you start your gambling session with Oasis. So this allows you to set goals. The goals I chose for this app were budget and time, which I'll talk a little bit more about during the demo. And also I added a goal for, well, it's not a goal, but it's in the same section, and it allows you to choose a check-in frequency. So the frequency that you get notifications to check into Oasis is user controlled now, which I think is really cool. So this screen basically allows you to, with those switches, you can turn on and off goals, and you're able to choose exactly what you want. So if you want to set a budget of $50, $100, you can set that. The time field is basically when you're going to end your session, and that's something that I had to change from this mockup. You'll see the text in the time field is different than it is in the demonstration, and that was clarified with user feedback to make it more intentional. So once you click Start Session, you're taken to the mid-session screen. So this is basically the main functionality screen of the app. This allows you to see your session goals, which is important. It shows at the top when your session started, what your goal is for ending it by, and what your goal is budget-wise. And the main functionality of the app is the periodic check-ins that you'll get on your phone. So as you go through your gambling session, you can put your phone down, you can gamble, and during the session, you will get notifications on your phone that will ask you to check in on your goals. And when you click that notification, you'll see this check-in box on this screen. That'll allow you to rate yourself from 1 star to 5 stars on how well you're sticking to your goals. So that's the self-accountability and self-appraisal that Oasis is asking you to do. So you'll be able to do that throughout your session, and it'll remind you of your goals in the top screen. So in the implementation for the app, I changed the default star rating from 3 stars to 5 stars, as I felt it was more positive to have a default star rating of 5 stars, and you could intentionally downgrade it if you want. And then also I added, in response to user feedback, I added time goal specific notifications, which I'll talk about a little later. All right, the end session screen. So when you click end session on the previous screen, you're taken to this screen. This has the session retrospective. So it'll ask you to grade yourself one more time on a scale from 1 star to 5 stars. This was also changed to be a default of 5 stars. And then it'll ask you to finally input what you did in respect with your goals. So if you had a budget goal, it'll ask you how much money you took out. And if you have a time goal, it'll ask you when you stopped. So that's auto-filled with the current time. But if you do check out of the app before or after you check out of the actual gambling session, you're able to change it as well. And once you click the end session button, you're taken to the past session screen. So it'll take you directly to the screen for the session that you were just on. Or if you want to view a different session, you can just click on the past session table in the history screen. It'll take you to this screen. So this allows you to review your session goals and review your goal status. So you can see, just like on the mid-session screen, your goals are displayed at the top. And then at the bottom, you'll see if you exceeded or met your goals. And at the very bottom, you'll see a check-in rating graph over time. So this will show you your stars over time for your check-ins in a simple and intuitive way that you can see. Maybe I struggle more in the middle of my gambling sessions. I need to stay more focused on my goals. Or if you tend to do well until the end, you might want to take shorter sessions, for example. So these are the main screens of the app. Some details about them is that there's a couple of details I had to choose when creating the app intentionally, and that came with a lot of thinking. The check-in frequency was a main thing. I needed to find a balance between annoyance and intervention. If the frequency of notifications was too much, you got notifications too often, people were going to just ignore the notifications, and that would ruin the point of the app. We want people to actually check in when they get a notification and not just, cast it to the side every time. But if the notifications were too infrequent and there's too much time between them, that also had a risk of diminishing the effects of the app. If you're only reminded every hour and your session's only 2 hours, you only get one reminder. So you're not able to keep track of your goals as well. So I set that originally at 10 minutes as a default, but as a response of a lot of user feedback, I actually changed this to be a user configurable setting. So that was one of the main action things I've changed as a response to feedback. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then the other main detail is session grading. So session grading is kind of a complicated formula, but in order to simplify it, it's represented by emojis. And it's calculated with 3 different sections. So there's goal fulfillment. That's pretty simple. You get a higher score if your goals were, met, and you get a lower score if they're exceeded. User ratings. So that's the star ratings we ask you to check in throughout the app. Those are calculated into a score as well. And then check-in responsibility. This is a big one. If you decide not to respond to the notifications, you get a lower score. So when you check in with Oasis, the score goes up, and if you don't, it goes down. So it's just a way to help you stay accountable with the check-in frequency that you chose in order to make sure you're actually checking in. So you can see the emojis that are used to represent the score from top to bottom being low to high. And the top one is a trophy because that means you really earned a high score. All right, I think it's time for the demonstration for the app. So let me get that set up. If you just give me 1 second. All right, there we go. Can you guys see my screen? Okay, awesome. All right, let me pull up my notes real quick. Okay, so here we are with the demo. So I just want to point out, so let's open the Oasis app. Okay, we're taken to the history screen. So this is the main screen of the app again. I'll take you right to the session screen. So we have the ability to basically start a session. So as a demo, we'll start a session with a goal of $50, and then we'll set the time goal. The time goal is auto-filled to 1 hour from now, but we'll actually set it to be a little shorter just because we don't have too much time. We'll set it to 1:38. So, and then for the sake of demo, every 10 minutes is a bit too short or a bit too long for the frequency. So we're going to change that to every minute. So yeah, you're able to set your budget goal, time goal. You can turn them on and off. And once we click start session, the session will start. So this is the mid-session screen when there's no check-in visible. It just shows you your goals for the session. While we wait, let's go check out the history screen. So here's the progress, or here's the history screen. The top, you'll see progress. This shows a graph of my sessions over time and the score I've been getting. So as you can see, I've been doing pretty well. I've got trophies for almost all of them except the first one. And you'll see the blurb underneath that says moderation is key. Let Oasis help you keep your gambling under control. So as I mentioned, that'll rotate in every hour. You can see the past sessions here. This one is ongoing, of course, so you're not able to see the grade. It's just a thinking emoji. But yeah, so we're going to background the app in order to get a notification. But here we have a little extra time. So I can point out, so you'll see the line graph has the emojis on the left side for pointing out when what the grade is for the session. So I'm going to leave this here for a second and wait for the notification. So just imagine you're at a gambling session and 10 minutes pass and you're mid gambling and you'll receive a notification that'll interrupt your play. So we'll just give it a few seconds. They occur every minute. Oh, sorry. I think the notification got hidden because I'm screen sharing. Let me see. Oh, yep, there we go. So Oasis check-in on your goals for this session. I click on that. It asks me to check in. So let's go ahead and say, we'll start out with like 3 stars. We're doing okay, but we could definitely use some improvement. So I click submit. That tells me when my last check-in time was at 1:31. And let's take the next minute or so to go ahead and check in the history screen. So let's take a look at this session. So March 21st. This one, we're able to see the session started at 5:10. Our goal was to end it at 6:08, and we actually ended at 5:57. So we met our goal, and our budget was $1,000, and our actual amount we spent was $800. Of course, this is not real. I didn't actually spend $800 gambling on March 27th. But you can see the check-ins over time. You'll see when they were checked in and the score I gave myself. So 4 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars, 4 stars, and that ended up being a good score. So I'm going to background the app again. Unfortunately, I don't think you'll see the notification pop up because I'm screen sharing. So I'll have to pop that back into the lock screen for that. Let's see. Oops. But yeah, so the notification timer gets reset every time you check in to be the frequency. So as soon as I checked in, it set the timer to 1 minute from then. So we'll see that in about a few seconds. Sorry, the 1 minute is a little long. I didn't realize how long 1 minute is when you're waiting on a notification. Anything else to talk about while I wait? I could talk about a little bit why the goals were chosen. So budget and time are pretty much universally relevant to every gambling like session. So it doesn't matter if you're sports betting or playing poker or doing slots, playing blackjack, stuff like that. Here, sorry, I think the notification just got hidden because I was screen sharing, but you'd receive a notification there. I'm going to do a 4-star check-in. So I'll say we're doing a little better. But yeah, I'll talk a little bit about the goals. So budget and time are relevant to pretty much anything. If I added other things like, per bet, or I can't even imagine like other goals that could be applicable more than one type of gambling. But these are really general and they're able to be applied to any type of gambling activity. So that's why they were chosen. And the check-in frequency was chosen as a result of user feedback. So let's go ahead and finally end the session here. We'll say that we actually did 5 stars by the end. We improved over time and we'll be able to see that. So how much money would take to gamble? Let's say we stuck to our goal and we did $40. Or actually, you know what? Let's say we exceeded our goal. We spent $60. It's unfortunate, but sometimes that happens. And it's 1:33 when we stopped the session, or I guess it's 1:34 now that I opened it. And we're gonna go ahead and click confirm. So here you're able to see the past session screen again for the session we just had. You'll see the session started at 1:29, ended at 1:34, and our goal was to end it at 1:38. We exceeded our budget goal. Unfortunately, we spent $60 instead of 50, so you'll see that. And we met our time goal and we ended at 1:34 instead of 1:38. So you can see at the bottom the check-ins over time and the star ratings. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the demo. I'll ruin my streak of trophies, unfortunately, by spending too much money there. But yeah, that's it for the demo. And then I'll be able to get back to the slideshow here. And if you guys have any questions about the app, there'll be time at the end and I can pull the screen share back up. So let me switch the screen share. Okay, can you guys see the screen? Okay. So on to results. So this app was distributed through Apple's testing program called TestFlight. Unfortunately, that means it was limited to iOS devices only instead of Android devices. That's because my experience with testing the app through TestFlight, I have experience with that, but I don't have experience with any Android equivalents. And I wanted to make sure I could get this out to as many people as I could without having to worry about managing multiple platforms. And iOS seemed like the right choice, as that's the phone I tested it on. This was spread through word of mouth and social media promotion. So I basically just asked pretty much everyone, a lot of people in here can attest this. I just asked everyone I knew if they could test my app out, and also posted it on some social media as well. So thank you so much for everyone who tested that app out, by the way. User feedback was collected via Google Forms. So I had the link to the app inside that form, and then users were able to rate things on a scale from 1 to 5, and also provide short answers that I could use to implement feedback. Overall, the app had 22 installations, which is awesome. And then 9 people actually went through and filled out the whole form. So I'm really grateful for that. So as far as the feedback goes, I'm really happy to report it was positive overall. A lot of people enjoyed the app. A lot of people really enjoyed the functionality of the app. The results were a little bit more mixed on the looks of the app, but I think that's okay because the design philosophy was not to make an app that looks amazing. It was to make an app that looks simple and is a contrast to the environment of a casino. So I'm okay with people thinking it's, not the best looking app as long as it's fulfilling its goal as a, contrast to that environment. A lot of people asked for configurable check-in frequency. So that's something I made sure to implement as a result of that feedback. And then finally, most importantly, and the thing I'm most proud of this whole project, the overwhelming majority of people said that this would have positively affect their ability to reach their goals, in a meaningful way. And that's the main goal of the project. That's the main goal of self-appraisal messaging. And I'm just really glad that the sentiment there was shared with what I thought it. My headset thought it would be a great time to turn off, so sorry about that. So some changes I made as a response to feedback during the app. So there was various bug fixes. I don't want to bore you guys with all the details of bug fixing, but one of the funny ones I had that I thought was pretty funny is my coworker Sam actually pointed this one out, but it was a bug that had to do with treating numbers as numbers versus treating numbers as words. So he had the app installed and it said, hey, you exceeded your budget goal of $250. You spent $90. What the heck? And obviously $90 is less than $250, but behind the scenes, I didn't notice that the numbers were actually being stored as words. And when you try to compare words the same way you compare numbers, it tries to sort them in alphabetical order. And since 2, the first number of 250, goes before 9, it said that 90 was bigger than 250. So that was a bug I had to sort out, which I thought was pretty funny. And then also, as a response to some other user feedback, I added time goal specific reminders. So these reminders are only enabled when you have a time goal enabled, and they will give you extra reminders at certain intervals around when your time goal is set to expire. So get a reminder around 15 minutes before your time goal, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, and then right on your time goal to check out of the app. And then you'll also get some reminders after the fact, just in case you forgot to check out. That'll tell you, hey, if you forgot to check out, make sure you check out. Configurable check-in frequency, as I already mentioned, that was a big ask. So that was something that I implemented into the app, which I think is a really good change. I didn't show you the whole range of them, but it goes from like every minute, every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, every 15, 30, and an hour. So you can really pick whatever you want for that. And then other changes for clarity, like changing different text and stuff like that. All right, finally for the conclusion. So the Oasis app, I feel, made a positive impact in the sensitive space of problem gambling. And I'm really happy for that. It was improved over the course of a year through testing and feedback. And there's still work to be done on the app. It still has to be tested on Android. It still needs to be, there's certain things that need to be changed in order for it to be shipped. But I'm just really proud of what it is. It's a culmination of a year straight of research, development, feedback, more development, and then messing with a bunch of different, node projects and, all the different stuff that happens behind the scenes that you wish you could ignore, but you take for granted until you can't. But anyway, the Oasis app, I feel, is a promising step forward in this field of trying to keep people engaged with their goals and know what they're trying to do during their gambling session. So I'm really, really proud of it. Here's some of the references I used. And then finally, thank you guys so much for watching the slideshow. Thank you for sticking around. I know there was a couple technical difficulties in there, but thank you so much. And now, do we have time, or do we have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I did want to sort of reiterate some stuff that I shared on your thesis document about how much I appreciate the detail you went into in investigating the customer and issues involved in gambling and the psychological foundation of some of these interventions and stuff like that. I think that was really great to start from for your app design and development. And I know, like, the experience of developing it was, from my perspective, you were doing a lot of thinking and then there was a lot of development right at the end. And I think that actually worked out well for you. And I think it reflects well in a simple, clean, hopefully effective, at least as you can measure it sort of ethically, implementation. And I think you did a great job. I appreciate your presentation.
Thank you. CJ, do you have a question?
By the way, wonderful presentation. You used, and obviously you did a lot of non-technical research on problem gambling. You used the term healthy gambling twice. And I was curious if that was a term that's used in the profession, healthy gambling, and what is that?
So healthy gambling is a term that's pretty much only used in contrast with problem gambling. It's just
Okay.
non-problem gambling. It's the way I chose to phrase it here. Problem gambling was defined by causing negative consequences, like severe negative consequences, to those affected. So healthy gambling is more of like a recreational thing that doesn't cause any addictive behavior and doesn't cause you to have like negative consequences in your life outside of maybe
So-
like losing a few bucks.
Now that I see it, it's the opposite of problem gambling, but it's not at the other end of the spectrum, like good gambling.
No, it's not like, yeah, it's gambling in general, like is ethically and morally like dubious. But problem gambling is a distinct like set of behaviors that is a problem for not only, losing money, but also for the rest of the aspects of your life. So that's why I
That was
chose
my-
the term problem gambling, healthy gambling. But
I
thanks for
was
your question.
encouraged with that.
Troy, did you have a question?
I did, yes. Great job, Tommy, on the presentation. I think the app has a lot of potential. And I'm glad you were able to at least do some sort of user study and get some feedback. So in terms of the next steps and improving the app, I like that you're already thinking about that. More of a comment than a question. It may be worthwhile if you're serious about pursuing the potential here and maybe one day soon publishing the app and making it available. It may be worthwhile to do more of a longitudinal study where people are recruited, they download the app and they start using it for a few months at least, and you look at the real impact that it's having on their gambling habits, and there's different survey methods you can use. You can log the use of the app and that sort of thing, but I think that would give us some really good data looking at the impact this app has and the benefits of it. So just more of comments than questions. So
Sure.
just wanted to throw those out there.
Yeah,
Great job.
So I didn't really discuss this in the presentation, but the testing methodology was set to be as like ethically controversial as possible. I asked people to use a fake, like free simulated slot machine. I gave them links to that. And then I had them, gamble for around like 20 minutes. So it wasn't something that I had to find like IRB approval for because there's no risk involved. But with something like a longitudinal study that involves people really gambling using Oasis, that would be something I'd have to consider as well, like board approval and ethical approval for something like that. So that's the approach. That's why I didn't take the approach in this time frame that I had. So
right, absolutely. And we have a lot of experience with that very thing. Getting IRB approval. It's a pretty straightforward process. And so it can be done in a way where, we'd be able to get the IRB approval and do that. So there's a question in the chat, IRV question mark or IRB question mark. So yeah, institutional review board. So if Tommy, if you wanted to do something like that, we would write up the IRB application and get that submitted, get it approved, make sure we're doing everything the right way. So it's definitely possible. But again, great job, and I'll give someone else a chance to ask a question or
cool.
Comment.
I'm gonna go with a question in the chat actually right now. So I saw that Joel said, oh, sorry, I think I clicked X to mute. Don't worry about that. I saw that Joel said, can you clarify how the user is supposed to rate themselves with stars versus how they already rated via the app's hard metrics? So the goal of the user rating system is to offer a little bit more granularity as opposed to just, did you meet your goal? Did you exceed your goal? It allows people to record not only like how they're doing, in respect to those two goals, but just how they're doing overall and like sticking to their goals rather than like a hard yes or no at the end. So it's sort of a way that you're able to grade yourself throughout the session in order to see like what parts of the session you're struggling with sticking to your goals, and stuff like that. So that's the main reason behind the user rating system itself. Otherwise, it would just be, did you meet your goals or not? Cora, you had your hand up for a bit.
Yeah. First of all, fantastic job. This is a really like well thought out app, from the UI down to the problem that it's trying to solve. Awesome
Thank you.
job. You, of course, I'm going to bring up the machine learning because, yep, I'm sure you could guess. You said that you were looking at ways to incorporate machine learning and how you were in designing this app. Can you talk a little bit more about what problems you were looking to solve with machine learning, and when obviously there's a lack of data that you can use here, how you solve those problems in other ways? Can you just
Sure.
elaborate on that a
Yeah,
little
of course. So that was the machine learning aspect was something that I decided on like pretty early, and then I changed later because of the lack of data and also the ethical issues I discussed earlier. But the goal was to be able to, as tied in with the capstone project I'm working on with CJ, the goal was to be able to predict people's gambling behavior over time. So instead of just asking how you're doing now, it would offer predictive notifications or predictive warnings like, hey, it seems like your gambling behavior is trending towards bad. You should maybe take steps to address that. And that's something that I wanted to make sure if I did implement, it would have robustness. It wouldn't tell people to keep gambling when it seems like they're on a downward turn, and it wouldn't have false positives, although those aren't as important. But just looking into like the lack of available data for something like that, and also the ways in which that's, possibly, inexplicable, or it's unable to be applied to a large group of people without having like side cases where things go wrong. That's the reason I decided to not take that approach. And instead, I pivoted the app focus from predicting if people were going to stick to their goals to reminding people to stick to their goals throughout the session. So that's the main pivot I made there. Oh, and did you, here, you can go ahead if you had some.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, cool.
Some explanation. Thank you.
Yeah, no, of course. Okay, CJ, looks like you have another question. If your hand's up, I see.
Oh, sorry, I did not have another question. But,
Oh, okay, no worries. I just
uh,
saw your hand was up.
Maybe before the end of the semester during the capstone group, I can tell you more about behavioral economics and how you can add some techniques to this to get people to actually use it and listen to it.
All right.
But then now it's not the time.
Sounds good, CJ. Thank you.
Wonderful. Oh, by the way, for the record, for everybody, I think you said that the data to train this, or the data was not available. It's actually available, but they don't want to give it away.
Oh, yeah. It's not publicly available. Sorry.
There are IRB issues.
For sure. All right. Thanks, CJ. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? It doesn't look like it.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Tommy. Troy, do you have any reservations with approving Tommy's thesis?
Nope, no reservations from my side. Tommy did a great job here, put in a lot of work with the background review, carefully thought about the design of the app, ran a user study, got feedback, and made updates to the app based on that feedback, and finished up with an excellent presentation. So no reservations from my side. I approve.
Awesome. Wonderful. Me as well. I think your report is very well written. I think your background, I appreciate it very much, because not often do we get such good exploration of sort of the foundations and some of this sort of research-backed implementations. People are just out there trying stuff, but this was awesome, and I really appreciate your hard work on this. So congratulations. I'll approve your honors thesis in the Barrett system, and you'll be all set.
Thank you so much. And thank you for everybody who came out today. I'm really happy that I had such a large audience. I was not expecting this many people to show up. So thank you for everyone who showed up and stuck it out through the presentation. I know it was pretty long, like 35 minutes. So
Great
Awesome.
job.
job.
Great job, Tommy.
thank you.